Welcome back. You're watching a very special episode of Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. We're discussing FDI in multi-brand retail and its implications. We're now moving on to debate number 2, which will essentially focus on impact on A, the modern retail, B, Kirana, C, FMCG players, D, the farmer, and E, most importantly, the consumer. And of course, how this entire retail play will come together in the foreseeable future. And joining me to do that, I have a very special panel of guests. Harsh Goenka, Harsh Mariwala, R.S. Sodhi, Nitin Paranjpe, international retail analyst, Manu Ghai, and B.S. Nagesh and Thomas Verghese have been very kind to stay on. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining in. So everyone's talking about how FDI in retail is really going to impact modern trade. But let's take a 5-year framework. What's actually going to be the impact on modern trade from a 5% penetration currently? Can I ask you to take that, Mr. Goenka?
My belief is it will bring an all-round improvement as far as the retail business is concerned. First of all, if you look at most of the stores, they are starved of cash. So to that extent, there will be welcome inflow in terms of FDI, whether it be with a private equity partner or with a strategic equity partner. Second effect it will have is, and which is most important, is with the consumers. The consumer will find greater choice and better prices. And most of all, the farmers. I think there will be a big difference in terms of cutting off the middlemen. The whole business from farm to the plate will become much shorter and much more efficient. In the next 5 years, perhaps 12 to 15% of the total organized, of the total retail trade will be with the organized system.
Mr. Mariwala, 12 to 15% in 5 years. Are you in consensus with Mr. Goenka?
I think it will not change dramatically. It will maintain its past growth rates. So 5 may go to 6 or 7, but medium term it can go, which is over a period of next 3 to 5 years. It can go to 10%, and beyond that, say long term, beyond 10 years, it can reach 15 to 20%. I think overall the interest level is high, but one is not sure until they actually commit to the funds and the overall journey. Yeah.
I'd like to bring you in, Mr. Sodhi, now. Who are going to be the biggest gainers and losers out of this move?
And everybody is talking that this FDI and retail is going to benefit farmers. But I've never seen any representative of farmers talking about benefits, what they are going to derive out of. First of all, I'll say that modern retail, what is coming to India, where all over what they are already there. Please ask them what question. Out of the rupee which they are going to get from consumer, what percentage will go to the farmer? In milk, in fruits, in vegetable. Because I can talk about milk since from dairy industry. In India, Amul is passing on around 80 to 85% of consumer rupee to the milk producer. All over India, I can even unorganized sector is around 60 to 65. But as far as my information goes, then a developed world from where these all so-called FDI people are is coming in retail, farmers get only 30 to 35%. Last year in whole Europe, farmers have gone for strike because they were getting only 30% of consumer euro price.
Thomas, I'd like you to come in on this. I know you're a big believer in FDI in retail actually helping farmers. So really your thoughts?
I don't think that view is correct at all. We do 50% of our procurement through Farmgate, and believe me, when I talk to the farmers who deal with us directly, they are delighted to be working with us because clearly there is no transparency in the APMC mandis. There is no fair play in terms of price fixation on the daily auctions. Many times they have to wait in the mandis for many hours and sometimes even a few days before the product comes for auction, and in perishable commodities they lose a lot of yield. And I think no farmer who is dealing directly with the retail chain even today in India can say that he is not getting a much better deal. He gets his payments immediately. So I think, I don't know what Mr. Sodhi was talking about. I thought they talked more about the likely shortages of food products and poultry and dairy products which will happen if the output of the farms is not increased.
Boon or bane, Mr. Goenka, your view for the Indian farmer?
Between the farmer and the end consumer, there are at least 6 or 7 intermediaries. The challenge is, how does the retailer buy directly from the farmer? And that is extremely important. If that happens, the retailer can give a better price to the farmer and can give a better price to the consumer.
Mr. Paranjpe, if I can get you in at this point, you know, a lot of people have voiced their opinion on whether the Kirana will remain to be relevant or will absolutely have a fatal death in time to come, you know, post-modern retail taking off. What's your sense, given the fact that we are such a unique market, we have such a strong bond with our neighborhood store, so much so that, you know, he delivers for 25 rupees, and on top of that, there's credit, which is really a very, very unique system. So don't you think it will take a very long time for modern retail to match this kind of facility and this kind of really, you know, doorstep mechanism?
No question. I completely agree with you. I don't believe that the Kirana down the road will become extinct, not at all. We've always maintained that India will be a hybrid trade environment. For the foreseeable future, I can see the coexistence of organized trade and the mom and pop store down the road. These will exist. Each one of them has a different role to perform. And you just described the sort of relationship and the value and the delivery and the credit and just the trust which has been built over a period of time. That counts for something. And by no means does the mom and pop store go extinct. Yes, some of them who are very close to the opening up of these large stores do have some of their business affected. That is true, and I think it would be wrong to pretend that that doesn't happen. But on the macro level, they don't disappear at all.
Right, we've heard the global giant HUL speaking. Let's hear from homegrown Marico. Mr. Mariwala, do you think they can ever go out of fashion? I'm talking about, of course, the Kirana.
I don't think they can ever go out of fashion. It will depend on which city we are talking of. In a city like Bombay, where there is scarcity of real estate, it will be impossible for big retail chains to have big malls in, say, parts of South Bombay or Bandra. It's just impossible. So we are going to be reliant on the Kiranas. There are some other cities where the outskirts are very near in terms of distance. Relatively, it's easier to occupy real estate space. In addition to that, the overall relationship with the Kiranas have done, and also in the last few years, they're prepared to actually meet this challenge from modern retail.
Let's get a retailer's perspective. Nagesh, let's hear from you on this one, on, you know, the future of Kiranas, really.
I think the first fact in India is, I think this is the only country where you have a 8 million number of retailers to a billion population. So we are saying of 1 in every 12 Indian has a private retail shop to his own name. Okay, so you are actually talking, sorry, 1 in every 120. So you are actually talking of a very large penetration, number one. Number two, when the base is growing and it is at a 5%, every 1% addition takes a large number, because if you look at the total pie of the $600 billion, that is growing by about 6 to 7%, which means that the India's GDP growth is adding about 40 billion US dollar of market every year. And out of the 600 billion, only 5% is modern retail, which is 30 billion. And 30 billion is growing by 30% every year, which means 39 billion. So Sonali, for the next, I don't know how many years, the modern retail will not even be able to capture the full growth of pie of the base. So what is the fear we are talking of?
Let me tell you, in India, retail chain will not easy walk. It's going to be a tough fight. But Indian traditional retail chain is operating on a margin of 8 to 10%. Whereas in all the developed countries, or where these multi-brand or retail chains have been successful, they have come where retailers are getting margin of 20 to 30%. So retail chain has to see that they have to manage their whole show with less than 8 or 10%, because consumer will enter to the retail modern format stores only if he is getting 2 or 3% lower price. I mean, that is going to be a very tough task, and ultimately people who are going to invest in India, they want money back. They are not coming in India for charity.
Are you then saying, Mr. Sodhi, that the government has not thought through this and is really playing into the hands of, the Indian retailers who are in need of this FDI investment, and of course international retailers who are awaiting to enter India because of the big opportunity. And, the farmer is just really going to be the scapegoat of sorts. And add to that, we're going to become, an economy that overconsumes.
But farmers are not got benefit from retail chain. You see, farmers get the benefit only if production, processing and marketing is in their hand, like in Amul. But here, farmers will produce, some second party will process, and third party market, and everybody will want profits.
Very optimistic, Mr. Sodhi. Doesn't look like that's happening anytime soon. Let's move on to the impact on FMCG manufacturers. Mr. Mariwala, how do you think this is really going to pan out? I'm talking about, once modern retail does take off. Global manufacturers who, are of the likes of HUL, PNG, Reckitt Benckiser, they really have international relationships in place with the Walmarts, the Carrefours of the world. Do you actually see that it's going to be advantage multinationals as opposed to homegrown FMCG players like yourself?
I don't think so, first of all, because it all depends on which sector you are in. Within FMCG also there are various sectors. There are impulsive purchases, there are food, there is personal products. So history has shown that in personal products, the overall brand loyalty is much stronger compared to foods, where the brand loyalty is much poorer. So I think it will be sector-wise rather than a player-wise. Just because somebody else is selling, PNG is selling to Walmart in USA in a much bigger capacity, they may have a marginal advantage. Having said that, there is a threat of private label, and the only way to mitigate that threat would be to market leaders. If you are a market leader in personal products or foods, the threat from private labels is much lesser compared to if you are a very, very weak player. And not only that, the market leader has to go on taking steps continuously to be 2 steps ahead of the private labels in terms of innovation.
Right. Let's get the FMCG giant in. Mr. Paranjpe, advantage global players such as yourselves?
The truth is that we have, and as Unilever, we have expertise in terms of dealing with large retailers. We've worked with them in many parts of the world. We know what it takes. We know how to work with these people. We've built strong skills and expertise and relationships with these people. And of course, they will come in handy.
Mr. Mariwala, coming to you, I really want to talk about the impact it's going to have on FMCG manufacturers. I'm talking about taking the retail, modern retail taking off, and the impact on margins. I mean, the clout is really going to be shifting, of course, in time from the manufacturer to the retailer, assuming, it takes off in a big way, especially in a high inflation scenario where you're saying that the consumer will be the biggest beneficiary.
No, as I said earlier, depending on which sector are you in. Are you in foods, personal products? Are you a market leader? Are you not a market leader? If you are a weak player, you will get impacted, definitely. Because you will have to, and if you are in food and a weak player, you are the worst affected. Sure. If you are personal products and if you're a strong player, you are the least affected. And everything else will fall in between. In a competitive market, everybody is vulnerable, So there will be some shakeout, as it happens in most countries.
Mr. Goenka, how would you look at, the small players and maybe the regional players? Would they have to tweak their model and get into sourcing to become private label manufacturers of sorts? I'm talking about smaller manufacturers, SMEs, etc., as you may call it. How does their model really play out in the future?
I see them becoming more as niche players rather than private label manufacturers because I see most of the multinationals producing on their own, or they have trade relationships with their existing private label manufacturers.
Right. I want to tie this question up with the premise we began our conversation with when we talked about farmers. Do you think the next step for the government would have to be considering corporatization of farming?
We would be one of the largest farmers in the country in the sense that we have 32,000 hectares of plantations, and I find it very difficult for the government to do that at the time being. There are many more priorities for them to take care of than this. So I wish they can bring in corporatized farming because the corporates will bring in mechanized, better methods of farming, but I can't see the government having the boldness to do it.
Let's get the lady who's not had a chance to speak, Manu, sorry to keep you waiting. As a global retail analyst, your view on corporate farming?
It's different than in other countries, because here it's policy formation is one thing and getting it enforced is another. So we'll have to the governments will have to work amongst themselves and kind of address from more a central government policy rather than a state government policy. So you must understand that there is a lot of regional disparity within the country which must be answered, and for any rule to probably be pan-India, it's going to be enforced by the central government.
Right, that's true. The regional disparity and those issues need to be addressed. We're going to be tracking that as well. But I'd like to close the discussion at this point. That was really some discussion. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining me here on Brand Equity. And with that, we're completely out of time. But do take the time and write into us at brandequity@etnow.tv, or alternatively, log on to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/brandequity to give us your views on this discussion. You can now also follow us on Twitter @BrandEquityLive. Keep watching the space as the debate on FDI in multi-brand retail is far from over. Hope you enjoyed the show. Until next week, thanks for watching.